Welcome to the Thought Diaries, a podcast dedicated to mental health, neuroscience and trauma. I'm your host, Roxanne, owner of Helix Trauma Training and founder of Trauma Healing UK. I'm joined by Jackie Allen this morning, and we're going to have a chat about the importance of nutrition and health. Jackie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, good morning. Hi, Roxanne. I'm Jackie Allen, and I'm really interested in the power of the microbiome on our overall health and well-being. Being a celiac myself, that has sort of made my interest very important to myself, and it's very much in tandem with what the research has been found. But to cut a long story short, I'm based in Inverurie in Aberdeenshire and live in a lovely wooded estate, which is absolutely beautiful at this time of year, I have to say. And I know that's something that gladdens your heart, Roxanne.
It does. When we live in, again, I live in the woodlands, and I've lived in little villages and towns before, and it just really does boost your mental health, that kind of the fresh air and the autumn colours and that kind of seclusion. As much as I can be a social person, it's nice to get away. Just sometimes having that choice to get away into nature. And obviously not everybody has that luxury, but it is just, I guess, getting outside, and that's really important at the moment when the nights are kind of drawing in, so to speak, and we're getting less and less daylight. I don't know what your thoughts on that are, Jackie.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that after having a long bright summer, which has been relatively good this year weather-wise, I think the darker nights do impact on our sort of well-being and just our activity levels as well.
Yeah.
I think, as it gets a little bit darker, you start to, we all, they speak about animals hibernating, but I actually think we as British people hibernate a little bit when it comes to the darker nights, because you're less enthusiastic about doing things in the evening, and that's when you're more tempted to snuggle down in front of the telly a bit more, and you end up just getting a bit lazy. And I do think the darkness impacts, and more and more, I think the research has shown as well that this is related to lower levels of vitamin D, which is known as the sunshine vitamin. I'm sure you've heard of that. So I think that there's a lot to be said for that.
And definitely, I mean, vitamin D plays an important part in mental health. It also is the building blocks to dopamine, which is all about kind of that motivation, and it can be quite energetic. And I guess if we're not getting enough vitamin D, it's not just we're not getting enough vitamin D, so we're a bit sluggish. It has an impact on so much else in the brain and other chemicals. It plays a huge role in terms of influencing other vitamins, other hormones. So I think, and especially I heard recently that the government are putting it on one of their recommended lists. And this is it's a rare thing because it's a natural vitamin. It's not a pharmaceutical. So there's not much profit to be made on it. But it just shows you that people in Scotland are really not getting enough sunlight, and it's becoming a health concern.
Yeah, just the research is showing that it is, and it's quite a simple fix, if that makes sense, for people that are unable to go outside, for example, the elderly, or people that are a bit more isolated or have, disabilities and so forth, that can't readily go outside. They're at risk, and also people who suffer from mood problems. It's really helpful for them as well. So I think it's wonderful that the NHS is adopting not just the medication side of things, but they can enhance the medication with such a simple solution in a lot of ways, and something that's totally natural, which is what I'm all about, is naturally supporting your health with supplements such as D3. So I think that's a wonderful move, I really do.
Definitely. I actually bought one of those, I don't know if you've seen it, Jackie, one of those light boxes. The ones that you get the UV light, and it's meant to obviously boost your vitamin D. It's sat in a corner for weeks now, and I've used it once. But I have taken supplements. I'm not taking them at the moment, but I do generally take them because I do realise the importance of it.
Yeah, because I think that the light box, for a start, I think they really do work. And I think for people that do have sort of low mood, it's a great thing to introduce, and there's a lot of research around that, using the light box. And that combined with some exercise or just getting outside even for 15 minutes. It doesn't have to be a great long 2-hour trek around the hills. It's really, really good. And I think supplementation, people think, oh, what is it and how much should I take? But if you get some good advice on natural supplementation, it helps to keep your body and your system in balance. And that's what we're always striving for. And if your body's more balanced with its nutrition and with enhanced by supplementation, it's really does pay dividends. It takes a little while to settle down once you get the right sort of levels for yourself, but it's really, really important. And I think your light box idea, I would encourage you to switch it on every day.
See, the difficulty with the light box is I looked at the instructions, and apparently you need to have it 20 centimeters away from your face for half hour, which means I can't do anything else. That's quite close to my face. Quite close. But vitamin D, and I think it's important to bear in mind about kind of any vitamins is what we're talking about, Jackie, is based on research. But there's also sometimes conflicting research, and it's about people being able to make their own choices and their own decisions. But what I really like to see is that kind of nutritional links between mental health is just something that's become quite recent, and it's becoming quite big. There's so much more research to be done because it's in its infancy, but it really is coming to the forefront in terms of things like leaky gut as well. I guess maybe people have heard about that but don't really quite understand what it is. Do you want to talk a bit about that, Jackie?
Yeah, I think that leaky gut is really associated with inflammation. So when we eat foods that really inflame our bodies, and I think the key culprit for that probably is sugar. We're consuming sugar in so many things, and it's hidden in so many things that we don't even sometimes realize that we're eating. So with people think they've got a good diet and often opt for low fat options and that sort of thing. But the overdosing of the sugar, if you like, in the gut, it just breaks through the lining of the gut, and little toxins can the inflammation causes that and the toxins then leak out into your bloodstream, and that's when the danger comes. And that all stems from your microbiome just being completely out of control with itself, if that makes sense. I don't like to speak in too many jargony type of things, but that's really what's happening. And there's in your gut there's about 4 pounds of bad and good bacteria in there. It's hard to imagine that there is as much as that, but that's what's in your microbiome. It's 4 pounds there. And what happens is that the bad bacteria just overtake the good bacteria, and that's when the problems really start. And it's reversible, obviously, by taking probiotics, and prebiotics are well known for that, and you get your yogurts and so forth. But actually lots of other really good foods are like typically fresh fruit and vegetables, these sort of things that are key to good health, and everybody knows that are really important as well.
Well, did you know, Jackie, that sugar is actually more addictive than cocaine? Apparently, what I read anyway, which is quite astonishing. When you really think about it, that we are consuming. We always see cocaine as a really bad, and it is a bad drug. I'm not for 1 minute advocating it, but sugar, and it goes along with alcohol. These are the hidden drugs that we just don't really talk about the dangers. And I'm not one, again, what I'm speaking about earlier, and I'm sure you'll agree, Jackie, as well, is it's not telling people that they shouldn't eat this or shouldn't eat that. It's about giving them the information to make an informed choice.
Yeah.
And knowing kind of the benefits of it and how they can change their mental health. And again, with the more and more research, I think what's interesting what you say about inflammation is we used to think of depression as a serotonin deficiency, so we weren't getting enough serotonin, which is actually probably a myth. And studies have shown that depressed people are actually got normal levels or even higher levels of serotonin. But what we're talking about now is that mental health linked to neurogenesis. And neurogenesis, it just means the sort of growth in neurons in the brain, the strengthening, as you hear when we're doing exercise, the strengthening in the muscles. So neurogenesis really is the strengthening of the brain. And things like leaky gut and not getting enough nutrients either causes the opposite of that, so it doesn't allow it to grow, or it can actually damage the brain. Well, if we are getting the right nutrients into our body, then we're promoting neurogenesis. So and that has a huge benefit in mental health. When we're saying that the opposite, the damage to the brain, is linked to mental health. It's a real physiological thing, and I think we sometimes forget that.
Yeah, well, you know, funnily enough, serotonin is actually made in your gut. Would you believe that? I think, you know, that going back to the sugar sort of side of things as well, it can cause, so, you know, it causes things like lethargy, and it affects your impacts in your sleep patterns and that side of things as well. And then the sugar element, if you're a lot of people, when they have times when they're feeling down, they tend to turn to either sugary things or alcohol as well, you know, and that is, of course, comes from sugar. So you're eating and drinking things that are probably not good for you, and just over egging everything with the sugar side of things. And there's actually a piece of advice that's maybe useful for people, is that you can download apps now on your phone that you can scan the barcodes of food, and then that tells you how much sugar content is in that item. So, you know, it's a really good way if you're really concerned, and especially if you've got, you know, your children, your family, and that you're worried about how much sugar is being taken. You download these scanners, and it tells you. And I mean, things like, I think there's something like about 36 teaspoons of sugar in ketchup, for example. And you start to think, oh, well, I'll have chips and tomato sauce tonight, you know, and you know, perfectly normal things. There's nothing wrong with them, but it just shows you how the manufacturers have kind of just increased our intake, and so we're actually consuming it in things we just don't even think are sugary sometimes, you know.
You're right, Jackie, because we assume chocolate and sweets, we all know that they're full of sugar, but the sauces that we put on our food, even the Jersey sauces, and I mean, I'm bad for that if I'm in a kind of a rush of just, and I'm a terrible cook, Jackie, so Jersey sauces on meat and veg, and quick and easy, but it is that kind of, if you know it's in there, making a choice on whether you want to.
And the manufacturers are naughty because they portray things with low fat, which you know, always want to have low fat. But low fat, if you look at the things, usually ends up being high sugar to give it taste. So you're sometimes better just buying the natural full fat ones, because there's probably less sugar in them, and that seems a bit, you know.
And actually, there's the science is changing around fats. There's more and more science promoting actually a high fat diet, because the brain's made up 2/3 of fat. Obviously, this is sort of, you don't want your trans fats in your deep fried, but because they've started linking the low fat, as you kind of alluded to, Jackie, that low fat, high sugar diet from the 50s and 60s as when obesity started to rise, and mental health problems and cognitive deficits. And I guess the science is changing now, which can be a good thing as well if you like cheese, which I do.
Oh, definitely. Definitely, that's what I would be disappointed. Being a celiac, you have to limit certain things anyway, but thank goodness I can still have cheese. So I'm really lucky with that.
The world is okay.
The world is safe.
What's interesting about the sugar thing, and I don't know if you've ever experienced this, Jackie, but if I get low blood sugar level, because obviously the issue with sugar is not just that it's addictive and it causes leaky gut, it causes our stress hormones and adrenaline to go up and down, and I find myself, if I'm having low blood sugar level, I get really anxious and angry. I think they call it hangry, you know, in the Snickers advert. But I see my mood switch like that in an instant, And so it's not even long-term damage it's causing to the brain, which is affecting sort of longer-term mental health conditions. It really can happen immediately.
And that goes back to being out of balance, as I say, because that's why we get the cravings. And it's a self-perpetuating thing, because then we'll have more sugar, and then it sets the whole system going into flight mode almost, fight or flight mode, you've heard about. And that's what's really happening. It's almost panicking your system, and you're in a high alert state all the time. And that's that's not good for you, because it's even not good for your, for your heart and everything like that. And that's where stresses sort of come out in different areas as well, because you think, how could that be? But that is actually what's happening. It's making your system just work harder and harder just to stand still, almost, is the easiest way to explain that, I think. And it's quite amazing how it all impacts, everything that we do. There's an impact somewhere. And it has to come out somewhere, and it comes out in different ways with different people. Some people, it comes out in their skin, when you get eruptions. And that side of things, it can be your blood pressure, obviously, because rocket and that side of things. So it comes out in different ways, in different people, obviously, depending on what our weak points are, I suppose. And that's where the depression comes in, because that can be our weak point as well.
And it's a cycle, because as you say, if you've got low blood sugar level, then your body's going into fight or flight. It's releasing all these stress hormones, and stress hormones cause a destruction in your microbiome, which is then allowing more neurotoxins into your brain, causing more inflammation. And then you're reducing the chemicals that are, or the nutrition that's going to promote neurogenesis, and so your brain starts to decrease, it starts to get damaged. And from being a therapist, what I'm interested in terms of is that the link, what came first, the chicken or egg, in terms of, obviously you've got your environmental stressors and your nutrition. And the way I see it is that with bad nutrition, we're not necessarily causing mental health problems. People will disagree with this, but again, that comes back to different research. But what we're causing is this more susceptible chances of getting a mental health condition, because we are causing damages to the emotional part of the brain. So when an environmental stressor comes along, we don't have the resilience in the brain to kind of cope with it. So that's the way I see it, is it's very much both environmental and nutrition, but it can be both, but rarely kind of one on its own. It really is a nice balance between them.
Yeah, it is, and there's a, I don't know if you've heard about I'm sure you have heard about the vagus nerve, but that's a little sort of communication railway between the gut and the brain. And it, again, so it's all connected, and that's what people are not maybe realizing, how important, how direct the link is between the gut. And I mean, the microbiome, its function there covers a few things. It covers one thing that's really topical just now, of course, is your immune system, so your immunity, and it is your brain health, your hormone production, as you already sort of alluded to, your digestion, even your metabolism. So it can impact, obviously, in your weight, and too little, too much. And it does produce the vitamins in there, and it's even influences your genetics. So it's so important, and it does such a lot of things. It's intrinsic to how we live. And we're only 10% us, the rest 19 trillion bacteria or something like that.
It's a nice thought.
It's what we are made up of. It's not very
Well, they're not calling the gut the third brain, because it has got neurons in it, and there's a fourth brain as well, which I can't remember what the fourth brain is, but that's on my next reading list.
Right. I'm not sure about the fourth brain.
But there's just a new book that's been released, Jackie, so you should maybe, I'll send it over to you and you can have a read over it. But so our 90% billion trillion bacteria, and there's just 10% of us. So I think just emphasizing that point does suggest that how important it is that we feed our bacteria correctly.
Yes. Using like pro and prebiotic foods. I mean, things like avocados, you know, are really, really good for us, because a lot of people are put off because they think they're high fat, but actually they're nutritionally they're really brilliant and they're quite soothing for your gut as well. So that's sort of things. And I know anybody that's talking about good health in any direction always is going to say fruit and veg, but anything that's natural, plant-based, anything that hangs from a tree or grows in the ground is always going to be good for you. Yeah. And at this time of year, it's lovely. You can make lovely soups, you know, coming up. Well, there's pumpkins galore, so pumpkin soup, obviously turnips, you know, all of these sort of things are so good for us and so nutritional. And they're not, well, turnips and things like that are not expensive. Turnips and carrots,
no,
you know, so good for us, but they're not expensive, and potatoes, obviously. So don't be scared to eat that types of things. They really are good for us. So that's my motto. If it hangs, think about someone. If it hangs from a tree or grows in the ground, it's going to be good for you.
Yeah, I like that. And the relation with mental health as well is getting the foods that promote neurogenesis, so promote the chemical that allows us neurogenesis for our mental health. So things like blueberries, ginger, green tea, which I think is absolutely disgusting, so I'm not going to drink that. There's a list if people go online and see that. And so you've got the vitamins and things that are going to help your gut and sort of restore that, as well as the chemicals that are going to allow you to build better emotional resilience in your brain. And it's not a quick fix, and it's not a guaranteed fix either, but really what is the harm in increasing your veg and increasing these brain foods, because it's you're not going to lose anything by doing it.
Well, you have to eat, so you might as well eat something that you think is going to do you some good. And you know, and even things are, you know, things coming into being now, you know, the fermented foods, they say they're really well. We're not a fan so much in the UK, but more and more you'll see it, like kimchi and all these things, sauerkraut. You know, that you always think of the Germans as eating sauerkraut, but
I love sauerkraut.
Things are very good for us, and we're not, you know, as Brits, we're not so good at going for that sort of things, but times are changing and people are realizing the benefits of introducing just some of these things into their diet as well. And if you just look along the supermarket shelves, it's amazing what you see, and it's good to try different things, because I think we're all creatures of habit and we tend to buy the same things. So I'd encourage people to maybe just try some different things, you know, and swapping recipes with your friends and saying, well, what do you like? And let's try something a bit healthier and a little bit different. And there's loads of information out there. So it's just coming out your comfort zone and moving away from your beans and toast, and maybe try something a little bit, you know, just a little bit different, you know.
I really like that. And I think, I mean, it can be difficult if you are really struggling with depression or anxiety to cook some healthy food. But my recommendation is just pick one thing to start with. So while you're buying your chips, which is fine because I eat chips, buy blueberries or buy some tea, and just kind of start to introduce it slowly, something that's really easy to begin with.
That's right. And look for color. I call things that are really tend to be not good for us, I call it brown food. And if you look, and it is true if you think about it. So I'm a great one for looking for colourful food. So if it is colourful, it should brighten your mood, but it's a clue that Mother Nature wants you to eat it, because it's like saying, hi, I'm here.
I once made a plate of food and I brought it over, and Ross was like, that's the most orange brown plate I've ever seen, because it was all like just stuff out the freezer. There's no colour in this.
And you do eat with your eyes, remember, as well, you know. So you know, think about these simple tips, you know, eat with your eyes and look at your portion control as well. And we're not saying don't have any of those things. I love chips and chocolate just as much as anybody else. So, you know, but it's like in moderation. And as you say, try and add in just one new thing into your diet that's good for you each week. Can be a little bit different. I think it's a good idea.
The other thing that I want to add in terms of when we're talking about nutrition and vitamins, which I think is really important, is omega-3, which you get from fish. Our body doesn't make omega-3. I only really discovered that, which helps with inflammation and sort of prevents cognitive decline. You've all heard, or most people have heard, the cod liver oil as a child for sort of to make children smart. And the problem is I hate fish, and I think you're meant to eat 3 times a week to get the kind of the added benefit. So for people who don't eat fish, it's probably worth supplementing with it, because they, as you call it, Jackie, the brown foods, they tend to be high in omega-6s, which promote inflammation, and which then sort of promotes your stress hormones to try and deal with that. So I guess, I don't know what your thoughts are on omega-3.
Yeah, I think so. It's proven, you know, the fish oil supplements, and be very careful when you're buying any type of supplement to buy the highest quality, because a lot of them are inexpensive, and they're inexpensive for a reason, because they don't have enough of the actual thing that they need in it. But it's also really good omega-3 for as we age as well, because you degenerate with age in general all across your body, and can even help with, you know, with conditions like Alzheimer's and things like that. So I definitely would recommend omega-3 as a really, really good supplement. But as I say, with all supplements, the priority is to look at the content and how good because if they don't have much in them, they're not really going to do you much good. So that's really a thing I would like to stress. Look at.
And I think, is it with omega-3, you're really looking for high content, say DHA and EP, what is it, EPA?
Yeah, yes, that's right. Yeah.
So high content to that.
Of that is really, really important, definitely.
That's the good stuff.
And if you're not sure, you know, speak to someone like, you know, myself, that's got a good idea of, you know, what the purity is. It's about the purity, really. That's what we're looking for. That's what I would stress as well. So definitely, yeah.
Another vitamin I want to talk about in relation to mental health is B12, because B12 is so important, and it is really linked to mental health. And there's been case studies done where people have been diagnosed with bipolar or psychosis, things like that, and it's simply been lack of B12. I mean, this is, to be fair, probably quite rare cases, but it just shows you. So these people have been then given B12 injections and completely cured of kind of the mental illness so quickly. So there are cases like that, which that fascinates me.
Well, for myself, because as a celiac, my gut doesn't absorb B12, so I have to have injections every sort of 3 months. I have mine, although I haven't been having them just lately, of course, because of what's been happening. But yeah, it is. It's a common thing that people can't absorb B12. It's not because we don't produce it ourselves. They can't absorb it into their gut, and you have to take it through foods and that side of things. So I think again, this is all the research that's showing the levels of certain vitamins are vital to our overall well-being. They all connect together, and I think, you know, that's what's been coming through in the research. How important these things are. And we hear about these things and we think, oh, really, does that really matter? But yes, it really does.
And I mean, you do get purer forms of B12 which are easier to absorb. It's methylcobalamin. I'm not entirely sure how to say that, but I would recommend, if people are looking for, or if they want to try B12 vitamins, to try the purest form. But I guess we had kind of spoke about this to begin with. Some of these vitamins can actually be dangerous if overdosed. So for people not to just think of it, oh, well, it's just a vitamin, it's just harmless. The consequences can be just as severe as pharmaceutical overdoses. Not to scare anyone, because unlike pharmaceutical overdoses, you probably need a hell of a lot. But I think people just really need to be careful when they are taking vitamins, and to get advice and make sure that they are taking the right amount. So they're not taking too low, but you're not taking 12 vitamins all in one day.
No, that's right. You're not going to have a cocktail of vitamins in it. And yes, it's like everything in moderation would be the key. And definitely I would recommend speaking to you know, somebody who really has more expertise in that side of things, whether it's at your Boots pharmacy or your local chemist knows just as much. They're really trained in these sort of things, because one of the things we find that doctors are not really, your general GPs are not really trained in nutrition, and a lot of them don't have a huge amount of training in this side of things. So you do need to speak to people that actually do understand about the whole vitamin supplementation things, because doctors, GPs have such a wide spread of knowledge, and they're not really probably the best people to speak to in that terms, unless it's something that they're really into. And luckily there are more people coming through as doctors now that really do now understand about the importance of the microbiome and the overall sort of wellness of people, if you like. And it's about being proactive and looking after yourself, I always think as well. So ask questions. It's your health, it's your body. Don't be scared to ask questions. It makes good sense to always ask, because it's very important, as you say, to not go crazy and think, oh, well, I've listened to this expert, or, well, we're not experts, but you hear experts in the TV all the time, and I'll suddenly go out and buy what they say and take it as carte blanche, that it's fine to do it. But as you say, you have to be a bit more selective.
I think most of the time when you're buying, the vitamins that you'll buy, the recommendations are probably a good sort of line to go on. Things like vitamin D, however, sometimes you need a lot more than what, I don't know if you found that, Jackie, you need a lot more than some of the standard ones that you can buy.
Yeah, I think the ones that I have there, you take like 3 little capsules a day, they're tiny little things, but you take 3 a day, for example. But that's the guidelines that the manufacturer is providing. So yeah, be guided by that, because they're obviously telling you.
Yeah.
And you can get combined ones now as well, so that you don't have to worry about taking too much. Some of the combined ones or sachets with the correct balance in them as well. So that type of thing is really useful for people that are not that sure. But I think coming up, where we started off with winter time, I think the whole vitamin D3, I think of anything, if you wanted to choose one thing just now for over the winter season, I would definitely see vitamin D3 would be the definite.
Because we didn't even touch on that for some reason, about seasonal affect disorder and winter depression, and how vitamin D, there's some studies that show that can help with that. So we spoke about the benefits of mental health, but for some reason I didn't speak about SAD.
You touched on it, I suppose, with the light box, because that's light therapy, is it is a recognised treatment for depression, actually, combined with exercise. So we did sort of touch on that. So yes, for some people it can just be a seasonal thing, very much so. And once they get back to summertime and we're outdoors playing golf or out for walks more or whatever, that kind of sorts itself out, if you like. But that proves in a way that the vitamin D3 that you get from sunlight exposure, a minimum of 15 minutes a day is really all that you need. But in the winter time, the sun's not so strong, so you would probably need longer from that point of view. But yeah, definitely exposure to natural sunlight, or if you can't, have the seasonally SAD, it's SAD, it is known as SAD, isn't it? Right.
Yeah, I think I like what you say about Jackie, about taking vitamin D is kind of the first, if you were to take any vitamin, I would agree with that during the winter. My additional advice would be, if you're looking to make sure that you are getting enough omega-3s and B12, we should be able to have it. We should be eating a diet that we get enough B12 anyway. But like I said, we don't naturally produce some omega-3s. And for those that are really struggling with their mental health, to either to try a vitamin, which is quite easily to do, or just to introduce one healthy thing into their diet.
And combine that with some exercise. And I know, if you're feeling pretty rubbish, the last thing you sometimes feel like doing is going outside and doing exercise, or go for a walk, or certainly going to a gym or something like that, because you just don't have that motivation, because it's really low. But the impact, the positive impact that you have on your sort of overall well-being, your self-esteem, your happiness, it is definitely going to be lifted by going and doing something like that, because you're doing something positive. And you're taking your mind off something, because you're outside looking at nature, for example, is so uplifting. Just what we started off speaking about, the trees just now. You can just appreciate the little things in life, and you see people around you going around. And I think it does really, all the research does show that it does improve,
Yeah.
your health. And if you're trying to eat some more healthier things, just, ditch the frozen food for, one night a week, or, that you might have got the chippy or something like that. But not that there's anything wrong with that, but maybe just swap it for trying something a little bit brighter, as I say, as well. That might help.
And my advice be, because I mean, I've been there myself with exercise, where I've just, if I've been really low, not being able to get out. But what has really helped me to get exercise, and I think this is just important, if not even more important for your mental health, is that social connection. So finding someone who you can go out and have a chat with for 15 minutes or whatever that you can manage. And social connection is one of the key things, in my opinion, a priority for mental health, because that also promotes neurogenesis. So if it's easier to combine physical exercise by going out and speaking to someone, I mean, and if you've maybe not got anybody immediately, I mean, there's so many walking groups to kind of just to reach out and join and just start off. And I know that did wonders for my mental health.
Yeah. Well, for me, if I'm feeling in low dose, I call it, then I getting outside and, going for a walk really, really helps. But yeah, meeting up with somebody. And, I was suggesting to somebody the other day, sometimes you feel a bit, she said, oh, I feel a bit stupid going out for a walk by myself. And I said, well, do you know anybody who has a dog, that needs walking? Because a lot of people are working and they're busy, and they would really enjoy having somebody that could come along and take their dog out for a walk. Well, exactly. It's such a simple solution, and they're probably time poor as well, thinking, oh gosh, I've got to take the dog out. And so even think about a solution like that. I always think if there is an issue, think of how you could do that. And then you've got the dog for company, and they're so uplifting in themselves, as because you've got 2 dogs, haven't you?
Yes, but if anybody wants to walk dogs that are listening to that, you can come to my house, because they're a nightmare. Every podcast I do, one of them's barking at the moment at something outside every time. So if you hear dogs in my podcast, please come and walk them.
That's a solution. But I mean, to be serious, it is hard to do, but when you come back, some of the problems that have been in your head tend to have dissipated a little bit. And if you can speak to somebody else, then you can support them and chat with them, and
Yeah.
Heads are better than one. And sometimes it just makes, I think sometimes we're all guilty of making mountains out of molehills. Little things suddenly gets bigger and bigger, and you start, that's so easy to do when you're a bit isolated. And that's one of the serious problems just now with COVID, and people are not able to mix as readily. They're at home alone, possibly a lot more, not able to be so social as we would normally do. And I do worry about that side of things, that's really impacting on people. But just reaching out, picking up the phone, if you can't go out, even just picking up the phone and having a chat the old-fashioned way, as opposed to a text or a message or an email, just picking up the phone and having a blather can really help. And you can somebody else's day by doing that,
Exactly. And actually that social proximity, we are social, even the introverts in us are social beings, and it releases chemicals in the brain that does reduce anxiety and does strengthen our brain. So I guess between what we've said, Jackie, getting some vitamin D into us, whether if we can get outside or if it's a miserable day, vitamins, getting some exercise if you can, and if you're struggling, finding someone in your immediate circle to kind of go out with a walk with, or if you don't have anyone, maybe look at joining a walking group, which is allowing you to get exercise, fresh air in nature, vitamin D at the same time, and in terms of adding some colour to your diet. And if that's only one thing that you can bring yourself to do, it is one thing better than nothing, and continue with that. Would you agree in that summary?
I think it's just simple, small changes. And if you decide to, just even if you say, right, I'm going to do that, set aside one day a week that's suitable for you, just make that your day. If it's one day a week, ideally you want to go out a little while every day, to be perfectly honest, if you can manage that. But that's not always practical. I know that myself, because You know, when you're busy, it's like, oh well, and then the day's gone past. But if you can try, you know, 2-3 times a week minimum, just doing something a little bit different, and you can exercise at home. You know, you can do, there's all these things that you can download and watch. You know, nowadays you can have 2 tins of beans, and that's a famous one. Take 2 tins of beans, and you know, things like that. And it's, there is ways and means. It's just setting yourself little changes, and little changes lead to bigger change.
And that's my ideal of hell though, Jackie, is doing those exercise videos and and tins of beans. But for me, again, I found the thing that works for me. And that's that social interaction and being outdoor with people with similar interests and friends. And it is, I guess, that individual finding, as you say, whether the tins of beans work for you. Have you ever done that?
Yeah.
You have?
I'll have to say I have actually done it. I know it sounds a bit sad. It just, I don't know. I'm probably one of these crazy people that will try these things, and I have done some of these exercise videos, and some are better than others, I must admit. And you probably don't work as hard as you do in a class, but during the lockdown, I did do them, and it did make you feel a lot better. It was like a bit of a thought to get the gear on and do it. But actually, after I had done it, I thought, oh, I'm so glad I did it. So glad I did do it.
Yeah.
So then you can give yourself a little pat in the back because you know, I've done something good today.
I bought a hula hoop once. You know, one of those fitness hula hoops.
Yes.
I did it like 3 times and it got too easy and I got bored. But hula hooping, it is a fun activity for people. So again, if that's your thing, hula hoop.
And you can do kids.
Well, I got the hula hoop, the exercise hula hoops are a lot easier than the children's hula hoops because they're heavier. So it's easier to keep up. But for me, the challenge was over once I learned how to do it.
Yeah, well, that's true. Then you have to move on to something else.
So yeah, adding that on, finding a little thing that works for you. If there's one day where you're struggling, don't beat yourself up about it either. Just take it as a day as comes and don't put too much pressure on yourself and introduce a little things, see how you feel and build up to that. And if worse comes to worse, there are 2 dogs here that anybody can come and walk for me.
Perfect solution.
Just end there, Jackie. I think as well, just to make everyone aware that Jackie's really, she works for Synergy, which has a lot of vitamins. So if anybody wanted to just maybe chat to her about what's available and what you recommend, just get, I'll put Jackie's details there for you. Right. Great.
Thank you, Jan. We've enjoyed that today. That's been lovely, and I hope it's, if for anybody that's listening, that there's a few useful nuggets in there that they can just grab hold of. That's what I would like to know. Yeah, 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 I would like to know. Yeah.